It's glory to the Chinese century and see what they're talking about. Like, quiet. Let's look at it. All this stuff's
Please.
Okay. So we got quiet. Check out, by the way, check out this video and watch on your own. Just I want to give credit to this guy because we're just going to watch his video. So make sure to actually check it out for yourself. And plus, I mean, who knows? What if I can't video edit it because it's a live stream. But what if I don't know. What if I'm taking this out of context? So just go watch the video for yourself after you watch mine, of course. Yeah, we're going to see glory to the Chinese century. So I kind of know what this video is probably going to be about. It's talking about how, obviously for a while you had the U.S. as the undisputed superpower of the world. Obviously, this happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, maybe even like a while before, because Soviet Union before it fell was just not doing good, and besides having nukes not being able to get fully destroyed because it just had the capability of ending the world. Really they couldn't do anything about us, the United States. So obviously for a long time, I would say really, okay, kind of not. I would say where the U.S. was most dominant, I would say after World War II. For the most part, it was kind of tied with the USSR, and then I guess kind of near the end of the Cold War is the U.S., and then of course all the way to today it's the U.S., but it's starting to look a little bit more tied again, So we're just gonna, and people are saying obviously it's gonna be China, for the last couple decades, they haven't really grown the economy. Like, it's crazy. I think, I don't know if that's true, but somebody once said, or some people said that, I think during, what was it? During the Chinese, the Communist Chinese Revolution, their entire, the country's entire GDP was worth $100 or around $100, which is crazy. And then now it's the second largest economy in the world. They already surpassed us in purchasing power, but they haven't surpassed us. Their economy last couple of years has slowed down, but they're still growing though. And of course, economy's a lot, but it's not everything. They've been building a military. They could build a navy faster than we can. Like, they also recently just surpassed us in ship making capabilities. And then, of course, a bad thing, their birth rates, they have a lot more manpower than we do, but their birth rate's is going to crap. But so is ours, but theirs is really bad. But again, they do have a lot more people, so take that as you will. But let's just go ahead and watch this video. And,
Please.
Okay, it's starting.
Please cut military aid to Ukraine. Shut up, you goofy cracker.
So I guess this is representing Putin and Trump trying to fight each other. We have obviously Putin wants to end military or cut military aid to Ukraine. Obviously the U.S. ain't gonna do that. And then you kind of insulting Trump, and it's just kind of is he saying, "Oh no, obviously he's not going to do it."
She can tell me what to do. 100% tariffs on Taiwanese microchips now. Yes, sir. Glory to the Chinese century. That Photoshop edit is Xi Jinping.
I don't remember that happening specifically, but it probably happened.
With the chat.
But this Photoshop, this is what whenever people talk about it, I've been seeing this. It would be a meme saying "Do nothing, win," because the whole thing about the meme was talking about the whole tariff thing where it was when Trump, I think. It wasn't the big beautiful bill. It was it was what was it? Liberation Day. Yeah, he was doing that thing with the tariffs, and my thing was I think tariffs are good. We should try our best to have things produced here or use our resources, but it's not good, or at least from a geopolitical stance, it's not good to do. It's not good to do at the same time because what it does, of course, you're going to have to deal with China alone first because they're the second largest economy and they could actually do damage against us. But if you do at the same time even honor Western European allies or just allies in general, you're going to push them away and push them to China. That's what we saw happen because obviously besides us, because we're giving them tariffs, China's going to see that how we're giving tariffs to even our allies, and China's going to take advantage of that and lower tariffs on them, which in turn is going to push our allies economically closer to them, which would be really bad. And that's why Liberation Day was a mistake. One of the first major L's that Trump did. And it's not good to push them to a country that, seemingly does not like Christianity, so that's not good.
bad jawline and that winning smile may have done more damage to American anti-China propaganda than anything the actual CCP could fund. Seriously, anytime something bad happens over here that just doesn't even exist as a problem in China, you just post a do nothing win meme with Chad Z.
It is. Like, he barely had to do anything. It's just the Trump or the US making mistakes. That's what they've been doing for a while with China, not even gonna lie.
And you've probably successfully turned an impressionable 14-year-old into a CCP loyalist. It's the same thing that gets Gabe Newell praised year in, year out without ever dropping a new CCP loyalist. It's the same thing that gets Gabe Newell praised year in, year out without ever dropping a new game. Hi again, fellas, and for better or for worse, we exist in a more interconnected world than ever before, and that only gets more true by the day. Global trade is the name of the game, where some countries make stuff and other countries buy that stuff. Not only that, but a revolution in communication makes it possible for you to be watching this video right now, and for me to make a living off a career that didn't exist 20 years ago.
That's what we're gonna do, right, guys?
You can access this content from anywhere that has an internet connection, and that includes if it's illegal to do so where you are. You just need the right know-how.
Yeah, it's crazy. I thought that... Let me show you guys what I was talking about, but the whole thing, if y'all saw the picture of the Pyongyang thing, let me show you guys what he's talking about. Basically what it was a Steam users map thing of like a map of the world and who all uses like the places where Steam is used or where there's registered accounts. No, okay, this is traffic, so this doesn't download, this is traffic. So this is where Steam activity goes on. So this makes more sense. Obviously, a lot in the US, a lot in Europe. And my phone has a notification, hold up. Okay, it's nothing. A lot in India just because it's highly populated. A lot there because they consume a lot of US media. Here. I wish I could zoom in, but I can't. I didn't know Steam was allowed in China, but I guess, yeah, that would make sense if it's allowed. But I wish I could zoom in. I don't know how I could... Here, hold up. Maybe if I just do this. Can I? No. I don't have a... I used to be on a laptop so much, and I recently switched to a PC. But look. There's 2 dots in North Korea, so, like, the crazy things... Who's using Steam in North Korea? I'm thinking it has to be some officials or maybe even Kim Jong-un himself doing it. I don't know, but that's just crazy. Cause maybe like really high up officials is allowed to consume Western media, but that's just insane. And I saw, wasn't there a dot in Antarctica for some reason, which is crazy? No, I don't see a dot in Antarctica. Maybe that one was Photoshopped. When I saw it with the dot in Antarctica, I think it was real. Unless this is just cutting it off. Wait, hold up. What if we zoom out? Because we're like, yeah, there was like a dot right there, but I don't see it. But okay, let's just go ahead and go back to this video.
Truthfully, no digital barrier can stop anyone sufficiently motivated to talk to a stranger on the other side of the planet. And truth be told, they can do that with ease never before seen. It's been making cultural exchange more vibrant than ever, and bridging cultural gaps more of a possibility than it has before. Almost every country in the world relies on all the others in some way, even the ones that are actively beefing. Everybody has a speciality that the rest of the world can benefit from. But some nations have stronger feelings about each other, both positive and negative, than others. Over the last few decades of globalization and the spread of free trade, America has spent time deepening its ties with China. We outsourced our manufacturing to them. Companies took advantage.
Now's one of the problems. Again, it's like to do nothing and win. I think before, I forgot which president. I don't remember if it was Bill Clinton. I think it was Richard Nixon that kind of started, but Bill Clinton did something too in that regard. But it was like China was like kind of locked out of the market because by then it was like dominated by the U.S. and its Western capitalist allies, and they're full-blown communists, so they're not really in the market. But of course, over time, China became more capitalistic to kind of reform. Now it's like they call it, I think, communism with Chinese characteristics. So it's basically just socialism, but with a mix of capitalism in it too. It's kind of like us, like we're mostly capitalists, but we've had some socialist values too to like, I guess, limit corporations from fully taking control. And just putting government regulations on stuff to make sure things are safe or subsidies and all that. But they, by the way, you might be wondering why are we talking about all this on a Christian stream? But I'll get into it in a second. It connects. But they're like kind of like us, but more in the socialist sense. They're more like strictly, they're more socialist. Everything's technically owned by the CCP, but because just like how pure capitalism can't work, pure socialism can't work. So they have some capitalist values, like they have currency, people work jobs, they buy and sell things. Obviously the government internationally does, but whenever they put those reforms in, whenever I guess they kind of started acting more friendly, we made a mistake by allowing them to be more on the more market. Not saying the U.S. are the good guys. I'm just saying like strategically, like we made a mistake and we let them like open up more, like I guess be in the world market more. If that makes sense. Also, correct me if I'm wrong on this. By the way, sorry if I get any information wrong. But yeah, that's they took advantage of that, and that's I guess simply how. I mean, there's more to it, but ever since that, they've been growing like crazy.
Advantage of their cheap and huge labor force in order to allow a real big flow of stuff to come to the United States from China. Stuff we buy from them in the excess of hundreds of billions each year. Tons of American companies heavily rely on Chinese manufacturing to do their business, and just couldn't exist without it. And despite this level of cooperation and synergy, many Americans don't view this current relationship as a good thing. Many view China as America's greatest geopolitical rival in the modern day, akin to a Soviet Union, another rising power that seeks to usurp the United States' place on the world stage. The difference is that the Soviets were very clear that this was at least part of what they wanted to do, whereas China tends not to get into fights very much. And also, America's economy was not...
This is something called soft power, basically. Where it's like they don't look over-aggressive like how the U.S. has been looking over the past decades. But obviously they still have ambition,
so inseparably tied with the Soviet Unions. With China, all that cheap labor we took advantage of has made us very reliant on them. Without properly decoupling these economies, which on its own would take decades and have its own challenges, any major action America tries to take economically against China to undo this risks causing some fucky-wuckies back home.
Yeah,
Case in point, everything happening...
something like this, we shouldn't tariff anybody else. The only exception is if China tries to move, I guess their docks or use other countries' docks so they don't have to, I believe they tried to doing this, I think last year, where it's we were putting tariffs on them to, kind of get around it. They would use their docks in other countries to technically those countries, since they didn't have the tariffs, they would have to, they wouldn't have to deal with the tax, even though it was the Chinese docks, but, I believe what we did, we just started taxing either the countries, even though we should just tax it, or sorry, not, I meant, put tariffs, on their docks there.
Right now? Oh, tariffs. On Liberation Day, they scared the fuck out of everybody on Earth, including Americans. Other countries were butthurt that they were basically being penalized for the crime of selling stuff to America, basically just punished for doing trade with us so much.
And like I said, I know this guy, I guess, that hates tariffs, and my thing is tariffs aren't good or bad, kind of like what I said about AI. Tariffs could be used for bad if you overuse them, or use them unstrategically. Yeah, it's bad, but they can be very good, and the thing is, by default, you don't want to over-rely on other countries. That's what Trump's trying to do, and I think by itself, yeah, the reasoning behind it's good. His reasoning, yeah, good. Now, I don't know, maybe he has some, greater ambition, but what he's saying, in public about why he wants to do it, yeah, it's good, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to do now that we've already made the mistake of depending on other countries, especially competitors, but also, you gotta be careful how you do it. You can't just go all out at once. That's, for one, you're gonna starve Americans. Number two, you're gonna pull everybody away from you to your competitor, who I'm sure would love to be softer towards everybody else.
Meanwhile, Americans were shit scared because all of that epic stuff we like buying relies on that trade, and it was.
I don't agree with this guy fully. You don't want to be dependent, but at the same time, like I said, you can't just go all out with it. You gotta be strategic.
About to get a lot more expensive or not available at all. Less than a week after first announcing his so-called...
So what was this video made, just to be curious? Okay, it was made a year ago, but whatever, we'll watch it now.
Reciprocal tariffs. Trump decided to put a 90-day pause on all the tariffs he put onto other countries, lowering that rate to a very generous 10% baseline, with a few exceptions. I swear to God, I'm not trying to be CCP state-sponsored propaganda with the shit I'm talking in this video, but look at my president, dog. I'm going into a recession. Mexico and Canada still have 25% tariff rates as of writing this video, while we forced them to watch from the sidelines as we gave other countries the pass by stabbing them in the back a little less deeply. But hey, at least they are not in China's predicament, a full-on tit-for-tat trade war. China didn't get any tariff cuts. The White House was saying shit like, do not retaliate and you will be rewarded. Just take it like a good boy, roll over, and let us put these tariffs in you. Give us whatever we want, and we promise it'll feel good. In response, China basically told us to prolapse our own anus. At first, they hit back with a 34% tariff matching what...
little disgusting humor, but whatever. Oh, by the way, if you hear thunder, it's been rainy and stormy, so hopefully my power doesn't go out. Just wanted to let you know. I think that was thunder I just heard, hopefully.
Trump had originally slapped on China. Predictably, Trump didn't like that they decided to go band for band and upped the tariff rate on China to 84%. China was all, this is light work.
Yeah, I remember
know
it was all like, didn't it get to like 244%, which is crazy.
you are richer than that. Let me see them racks. They matched that 84% tariff rate right back. Trump hits again, where around the same time he lowered the tariff rates on most other countries while negotiations with them were taking place. He first raised the active tariff rate on China to like 104%, but then went, it's not enough, and cranked it up even more to 125% tariffs on all Chinese goods. If these numbers feel meaningless at this point, then congrats, you're on the right track. At this point, we have a tariff rate against all imports from China so high that trade between us is now functionally non-existent. In most cases, it is just prohibitively expensive. And even if all these numbers that I hate reading disappeared tomorrow, the world wouldn't
I wonder how
just
the tariffs are still doing today. Like, I know they're not this bad now, but I wonder if they're actually still trying to push it.
Bounce back unscathed. The scars left by America clawing out its own organs and shooting porcupine spikes in panic at the rest of the world do not heal easily. And China doesn't seem like they are willing to back down anytime soon on this. Like, they are
Never back down, never what?
running an all-time great PR campaign on this one. They are physically embodying that image of Xi Jinping just farming all the available aura in whatever city he was in. What they said boiled down.
Now, another thing to also watch out for. Yes, geopolitically, this helped them. At the same time, they also did get really hurt because just like how we depend on them, they depend on us. So you gotta remember, they did get hurt from us. Yeah, it was our dumb decision that do it, and yes, it did push away allies, but at the same time, economically, this did really hurt their economy and slow their growth also.
To listen, we try not to start fights, but don't think that we cannot finish them. By weaponizing tariffs to exert maximum pressure for selfish gains, the United States is pitching itself against the rest of the world. China's countermeasures are not only for safeguarding our United States is pitching itself against the rest of the world.
Yes,
China's countermeasures are not only for safeguarding our own interests, but also for upholding international fairness and justice.
See, that's what they did. They noticed how like they used that to take advantage and make themselves look like the good guys.
The multilateral trading
not saying the U.S.
system
are good guys. I'm just saying that's their strategy.
Common interest of the international community. China doesn't want a trade war, but we will fight if we must. We're not going to sit down and let anyone take away the Chinese people's legitimate rights and interests, or let anyone sabotage the international trade rules and multilateral trading system. They're doing this all at the same time that they're shouting out Speed for his live streams across China, sparking positive discussion.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, they also used that to. Again, it's soft power. They're making themselves look good for their ambition of, becoming, being the dominant superpower.
Between the actual people in these two countries. And they're also retweeting clips of Ronald Reagan calling terrorists.
Wait, I remember them doing that. No shot. They actually did that? I know this was a year ago, but still, no shot.
Yet today, protectionism is being used by some American politicians as a cheap form of nationalism.
Wait, hold up.
Protectionism is being used by some American politicians as a cheap form of nationalism. We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, our national security, and the entire free world.
Sounds like criticism of
I forgot, was Ronald... I don't know if this taken out of context, was Ronald Reagan... I know this clip obviously makes it seem like he was not like pro-terrorist. So was he actually? Hold up, I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, let's look that up really quick, guys. Again, this is AI, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's saying Ronald Reagan was generally opposed tariffs. Okay. So I guess what they did is, obviously, Ronald Reagan, he didn't like tariffs. And obviously Trump, he loves tariffs. So seeing that or knowing that they took a clip, because I guess they also figured or knew that he was also, for the most part, a very loved president. So they kind of twisted his word, or took him out of context. I guess clipped him, not him speaking against terrorists and its effects. And used that to kind of, for ironic sense,
Pretty familiar situation, huh? This is
I can't even see the video. I'm going to go back.
Should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weakening our economy, on national security and the entire free world.
Sounds like criticism of a pretty familiar situation, huh? This is subtitled in Mandarin and English. If you want to call this propaganda, then it's really fucking good propaganda. They're literally letting our own former leaders make the criticisms of the modern day America, and you can deploy the same video both in the States and back home, bro. It's pulling double duty. They're just straight dog walking us in the marketplace of ideas, and it almost feels like Trump just handed them the chance to present themselves as the bulwark, attempting to keep the world stable for everybody in it, while the old guard squabbles with its former allies both at home and across the world to try and extort concessions out of them. To be dramatic about it, it almost felt like they were given a chance to prove themselves a more capable steward of the world order, maybe even as the right hands to lead us into the future. I'm not saying I agree with that sentiment, this is just the discussion currently being had, but let's entertain that idea for a second. In fact, let's discuss the Chinese century. For those of you who don't know what the Chinese century is outside of a few funny Trump memes, it actually refers to an existing term that has been used throughout the last few centuries. Pax Britannica, or Britain's imperial century, and for the purpose of this video, just the British century, was the period of time taken up most of the 1800s and in the very early 1900s when the British Empire was at the height of its power and pretty solidly established as the de facto superpower on Earth. Likewise, the 20th century is often referred to as the American century. In 1945, as Europe
it's like
recovered
a thing
from
they believe, or it's like every century, each country has its like superpower, I guess, role as the superpower of the world. Like obviously, like this guy said, it's 18th century and early 19th, it was the British. 20th century, it's Americans, I guess. 21st century, I guess it's going to be the Chinese.
the devastation of World War II, Britain began its process of decolonization, and it
So what, is after it's, are we going to have the Indian century or something?
declined in power from there. Meanwhile, America managed to
Or
escape
maybe
the war
Brazil locks in, maybe the Brazilian century.
virtually unscathed, with the war's actual battles never reaching the contiguous 48. The manufacturing capabilities the states developed for building weapons of war could now just build stuff, and they were better equipped to do it than just about any other nation on Earth. America used that power
We're kind of seeing that with China. I feel like they're building stuff really fast with shipbuilding and then also construction. So much so that they have a lot of abandoned buildings just falling apart in their country because they don't have enough people to, or people are not willing to buy or spend much money there. So they have like a lot of just abandoned houses or buildings just collapsing.
to rebuild the world in its image, creating a system of global trade that America sat at the center of. Sure, during the Cold War, they beefed hardcore with the Soviet Union on who was going to have cultural and economic control, and who would determine the vision for the world's future. But the 20th century went on, America continued to consolidate power, and when the Soviet Union shit the bed and collapsed in 1991, the United States was the last player in the Fortnite lobby, firmly establishing the 20th century as one of American dominance. Going into the new millennium, America emerged as the world's lone superpower and arbiter of trade. Some people were saying, we figured the whole thing out. This is the end of history, giving America the ability.
I remember when, well, I guess some people still do, but I remember people believed that a lot. That was so, especially as a Christian, because obviously, like I said, if you read the Book of Revelation, that's not going to be true. It's not just going to be, there's never going to be one, I don't care what country is this, I guess, dominates the world. I don't care if it's the US, I don't care if it's China, I don't care how much of an actual utopia it becomes. Like, if you read the Book of Revelation or just the Bible in general, you know the world's going to go to crap, and then Jesus is going to return and build his perfect world. The only permanent utopia we're going to have is a kingdom led by Jesus. So yeah, maybe for a moment, I guess if China rises as a superpower, I guess it doubts more Christian morals, which I don't know if that'll happen. It looks like Christian growth is slowing down. Maybe we'll have utopia for a little bit, but it always gets a crap, you know.
To establish
And it's always so crazy that people actually believe that America's just going to be a superpower forever.
cultural and political hegemony around the entire world. Now, in contrast, the Chinese century is not a thing yet. It's a hypothetical that basically posits that in the way British rule and culture defined the 19th century, and American culture defined the 20th, a rising China will similarly grow in power and eventually define the 21st century as their own. China initially got its boom when America outsourced its manufacturing needs overseas, so goods could be made and sold for much cheaper back in America. To do so, we gutted the US's own capacity to manufacture and set up China to become the new world's manufacturing hub. So
he basically explained it in depth. Like, now of course it's still not good for China because we still own all the companies that they manufacture for. So if we somehow make it to where they can't, they don't have the license to make our stuff, that'd be bad for them. unless they could find a way to like make everybody else's things, which they could if they pull all their allies towards them. But like I said, it's bad out, and that's the whole reason with the tariffs. That's what Trump was trying to do, or the Trump administration. They're trying to pull all our industry back in the U.S. so we can be the makers and the owners and the makers, not just the owners of everything or most things. But obviously, it's kind of too late just to do it, like, just to spontaneously do it all at once. Just do it now. We've already made the mistake.
From the bands they were making from that, China stacked their money long and tall enough into becoming the world's second largest economy. Fast forward
like I said, that's how they just went from having a GDP worth $100 to having the second world's largest GDP and having the country with the most or highest purchasing power.
The current day, that is the position we find ourselves in now. An incredibly simplified version of the whole
And having the world's largest population and military.
thing with a lot of details I definitely missed in that are important, but you get the point. With America's recent actions, nations around the world feel like America is kind of throwing in the towel, that we're up against the ropes. And it's like, if potential Chinese dominance is the threat we fear and the thing we don't want to happen, then us squabbling with our own allies feels a little silly, especially when a lot of these guys were previously in lockstep with America's China foreign policy. They don't really feel like they can rely on us anymore, which, like, fair enough, which has already resulted in us pushing former butt buddies directly into China's arms as we make ourselves seem more like another antagonist instead of an ally. Here's an analogy that'll activate some sleeper cells in the audience. I only include this flashbang because maybe it'll make the position we find ourselves in click a little more clearly for some of y'all. Dude, I just realized the United States is like Drake.
Oh, that's when all the this was made when all the Drake and Kendrick Lamar stuff was like going on, or just happened, right?
China is like Kendrick Lamar.
I guess I see the connection, even though I don't really listen to much rap because it's really bad for the spirit,
I don't want to be Drake. Wipe those tears off your eyes and think of something else so absurdly corny it circles back around to being a banger. Nothing is set in stone right now, but already China in the EU, who I guess in this metaphor could be seen as Playboi Carti getting 3 features from Kendrick on his recent album after only having collabed with Drake before. Like said, but the EU and China are already talking about potentially removing tariffs that Europe had put on Chinese electric vehicles just last year, instead setting a minimum price of sale for
their vehicles, the Chinese vehicles that dominate the world right now. Well, I know if you're in the US, you're like, Chinese vehicles, we don't there's no Chinese vehicle or Chinese owned or manufactured, or sorry, not manufactured, but Chinese company owned vehicles here, or not owned, but like vehicles produced from Chinese companies. Well, basically, thing out the burp, almost around the world, I forgot the name, I think it's BYD, something like that, but if you live in Europe or just in general around the world, that's a very popular car brand, but we don't see that here because the US banned them.
Chinese EVs, so they can enter the European market again. These recent tariffs have put countries like Vietnam in a stinky position as well. Historically, Vietnam has tariffs have put countries of sale for Chinese EVs.
EU, China will look into setting minimum prices on electric vehicles,
so they can enter the European market again. These recent tariffs have put countries like Vietnam in a stinky position as well. Historically, Vietnam has tried to toe the line on its U.S.-China relations, keeping in touch with both, where it exports the most amount of stuff to America, but its largest trading partner overall is China. They're caught in a situation where they might have to choose which market they prioritize having access to. And there are some out there who think this is genuinely the way things are meant to go, in like a really cosmic sense. Chinese international student in my class was telling me about how an evangelical...
I've seen this. I'm glad he should. Okay, I'm gonna just read this. So, somebody posted as a meme. Chinese international student in my class was telling me about how his evangelical dad in Beijing believes that Trump was chosen by God to win this election, but that his victory would be part of a larger divine plan to destroy the United States. Bro, this is so funny, bro. Okay, this is actually, I'm really happy this actually showed up because I've seen this, and this is actually the reason why I kind of pulled up this video to kind of explain that. I do actually agree with this, maybe. Of course, nobody knows God's plan for sure, so this is just a theory, okay? Of course, nobody knows the future. I'm not in the 4th dimension, okay? I'm only a 3-dimensional being. But basically, what some people have a belief in is that, like, the United States obviously was set up on somewhat on Christian values, freedom and stuff. Or just, is my phone going off? No, it isn't. Okay, guys, I need to lock into my explanation. But obviously the United States was kind of set up on Christian values. Some people call it a Christian nation in a way because they focus on individual freedom and choice. But and obviously you've seen over the last, I'll say last, I guess, kind of century, we've seen a decline in values because early on the U.S. was like dominated by Christian values. We a lot of people believed in God. A lot of people went to church, especially followed God, not just claimed to be. And I'm not saying it was perfect back then, and I'm not saying everybody was a Christian. Obviously, at the same time, the U.S. was kind of set up as a secular country because it also talked about how you don't have to believe you don't have to believe believe in God, and then also another thing is people kind of took the individual freedoms as demeaning. Hey, I don't have to like. I guess in a way, I could kind of be people could kind of be prideful about their identity, obsess about it, and kind of idolize themselves. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but in general, like people are predominantly Christian, and we've seen a decline in that. It's becoming less common to be Christian, and a lot of people, especially if you live in a Bible Belt, people will claim to be Christian, but they don't follow the. They'll still go out of church. They'll still act like a normal person. So that's the thing. But if you go to China, yeah, obviously I know like they may have a lot of Christian. Like I think 50. I think 50 million, which seems like a lot, or it's like 60 million, but obviously they have over a billion people. So statistically, it's like nothing. But socially, they're like very conservative, and in a way, they follow Christian values and unity more than we do. Even though we're the ones who actually, or I wouldn't say we're the ones who actually follow Jesus. U.S. cannot be considered a Christian nation because of how much people in here just don't care about God. But over there, like they live it, despite despite a lot of them probably not even knowing who Jesus is. They follow in a moral sense a Christian lifestyle better than we do. And even let's say they just don't like God at all. I feel like because the U.S. has strayed away from Christian values, it's kind of like an Israel Babylonian situation. God is like may like rise of China to humble the U.S. is shifted closer to God, or maybe the U.S. will just in a way just fall apart, and then China will like turn into a Christian nation, kind of like what Rome did, kind of like how Rome rose as just like this paganistic country, but eventually Christianity spread so much. Basically, so yeah, you had this quote, right? It's basically what it's saying, or kind of what I interpret is like how you know how like back if you ever read the Bible or like the Old Testament, they get to Israel, they start they were supposed to be faithful to the Lord, and they're supposed to be God's chosen people, which they still were in that time, but they started disobeying. So God rose an empire, the Babylonian Empire, to invade them and exile them until they learned their lesson. Then they came back. So I think it's kind of the same thing with the U.S. It's like, yeah, the U.S. was never strictly a Christian nation. I wouldn't ever really consider it a Christian nation in the legal sense. It was always about individuality and I guess, just freedom alone. But obviously, it came with Christian bound values like freedom of opinion, freedom to be a Christian in general, but also just I guess trying to have a fair like legal system and all that. But even socially, like most of the majority back then were Christian, and a lot of them did follow the Bible and was like actually Christian, not just faking it. They weren't just claiming to be Christian. Then because that's a lot of people in the Bible Belt, but they weren't claiming to be Christian. Then I guess after when they get out of church, just act like the world. But what I was saying was because kind of like back then, because we're seeing, because nowadays last like century or so we've been seeing the United States decline in Christian values socially. So that's I think we're seeing the same thing here. Now I'm not saying that China is just gonna invade the U.S. or directly invaded the U.S., especially not soon. But I think we're seeing a similar pattern. You know what they say, history repeats. So I think the first thing we need like a spiritual revival in the U.S. But if we don't get that, I believe we're cooked. It may not be with China, but who knows, Like literally most of the people running our government, it's so bad, most of the people running our government are, pedophiles. So that's already not a good start. Which not saying they ever were before, I'm just saying especially now. So I think this might, of course, nobody knows God's plan for sure, but even then, like, I think this is what I'm seeing right now. And even then, if you go to China, like I said, they're socially, like, the values they practice in a sense are like kind of Christian. Like, yeah, they don't, most of them don't know who Jesus is, but socially they're a lot more conservative. They value family, which is stuff that Christians should value. And even though the party's atheist, they still have kind of, in a sense, Christian values. And within the small Christian, for one, well, the Christian population, even though the government's like trying to go after them and stop the growth, they're growing like fire. Like soon, if we pull up raw numbers, it'd be, I mean, yeah, density, even soon, density wise, the Christian will be majority, like, I guess, or the population won't be majority Christian, but if we go to raw numbers soon, China will actually surpass us in Christians. And if you actually see the Christians there, they're actually, for the most part, I would say maybe except for the few that go to like a state sanctioned church or church that are like church that are like from what I heard from those churches, they're not really like biblical. They're kind of like, they have a few Christian teaching there, but it's mostly the government trying to enlist like socialist values, trying to push. I've heard they're even trying to like rewrite the Bible, but I wouldn't really trust those churches. I guess is how the best way to put it. But especially the underground Christians, they're actually on it. They're actually experiencing persecution, so they're a lot more disciplined than the U.S. Christians that we have here. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we just see the U.S. just more and more morally decline, with the government just an evil government, the people just eating up the slop of the government, like we're seeing it now with the whole two-party system and which I get it. There's almost always been two parties, but still, like, they're both bad and people are just eating it up. You have one party that just hates Christianity and just wants to get rid of it, and the other side you have another party which poses as a Christian party but really does not care about Christian values. It's crazy how many Christian conservatives, even like in that party, things like what's it called? I can't remember the sin. Doing the thing before marriage. Like, even that, how many Christians conservatives, like Christian Republicans, support that is just sad. And you can't support that and be a man of God unless you just don't know it's wrong, which is kind of hard to do. But yeah. Although I'm just second, make it. I keep forgetting to make it to where y'all could actually see it. Close out Discord too, because we don't need that open. That's. Didn't mean to close out of Steam, but whatever. I don't need that open either. Okay. But yeah, that's what I think about when I see this quote, basically. And that's kind of what I see. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you see the West just decline, and then slowly, because China's already a place where it's like, if you strip away the script, like strip away the Jesus part and the God part, and you just have the values and the rules, essentially, it's already, in a sense, you're more accepted and more valid to believe in the social, like the conservative Christian values there. But even then, like, you already see a growing Christian population there, and you don't even see a growing Christian population in the U.S. So I wouldn't be surprised in a long future where China just becomes this like Christian empire. Christian, of course, with no Western values, it's gonna be. Which, by the way, I'm not complaining. Like, I don't care about any like Western Eastern values, just as long as the country's actually biblically like Christian. Like, I feel like it could be a Rome scenario where it's like the Roman Empire grows this empire that was paganistic and did not care about Christian values, and Christianity was illegal. People were getting tortured, but eventually it became so big that it infiltrated the government. It just became this like Christian empire. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that with China, like maybe, I don't know, 50, 100 years down the line, maybe a couple hundred years down the line. And you have the West just falling, just becoming nihilistic and atheist and demoralized and falling. And then you have China with a rising Christian population, just a rising country, become this like, just Christian empire that's like authoritarian. Like, I feel like it'll still be authoritarian, but it'll be Christian, which I really don't mind an authoritarian Christian government. I'm gonna be honest, as long as the government's not corrupt, which is hard to do. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. So that's what I'm gonna say. It would be a nice China. Like, it would be hard as a Christian not to support. Even then, like, I know a lot of Christians don't like China, but at the same time, both. The thing about if especially read Jesus' teachings, it's more according to Jesus, it's morally more acceptable to to outwardly just deny Christ and to pretend like you're a Christian. And the thing is, they outwardly deny it, which is better, but at the same time, even though they deny it, at least they like still, in a sense, I wouldn't say fully follow his teaching, so they deny Jesus, obviously, but at least they're like more conservative culturally and they care about family, which the US struggles to do. So that's how I see it right now.